What's going on, everyone? My name is Carlos Serrano, and you are listening to the Blood, Sweat, and Tears podcast. This is a sports podcast where we dive deep into the life of an athlete, tackling topics on faith, the body, and the mind. In each episode, I will be having a new guest on the show where I will be interviewing them about their sports experiences, along with their personal faith journey. I hope this can be a show that can fill you up with encouragement and insight through the discussions that we will be having here. Now, with that being said, let's get on with the show. What's going on, everyone? Welcome to this episode of Blood, Sweat, and Tears podcast. I'm joined today by a great friend of mine, Loren Snyder. Loren, welcome to the show. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Carlos.
This, if you don't know, this is a podcast where we talk about sports, but also we talk about God as well, and how that applies to sports and how we can apply those things from sports to our lives as well. But first, just want to ask Loren if you can tell the listeners what it is that your sports experience was like. What is your history with sports, for those who don't know? And honestly, I don't really know that much, so this is new for me as well. So,
Okay.
Why don't you tell us that?
Well, I grew up playing sports. You know, I played baseball, basketball, and football from the time I was a little kid. And by the time I got to high school, it got kind of whittled down to the sport I was supposedly good at, which was football. And I ended up on a scholarship going to the University of Northern Colorado in Greeley, Colorado. Went there for 5 years. I redshirted and ended up being like a 3-year starter at the University of Northern Colorado. Had a great time, learned a lot. And then I had an opportunity because we threw the ball a lot, and I got some recognition. So I ended up being a free agent for the Dallas Cowboys in 1987. And then the following year, I tried out for the Denver Broncos. And I was with them through the preseason, got cut during the last or after the last preseason game. So that was pretty much the extent of my NFL career.
Well, that's definitely longer for most other people who've tried football. Mine was cut short in high school. But what was your experience like? I think first off with college ball, and then what was it like for you, like being in the NFL? It's almost every kid's dream to be a part of that.
You know, it was great. I'm really glad that I went to a smaller school.
Mm-hmm.
And I got to play at an early age, and like I said, we threw the ball a lot, so that's a quarterback's dream, is to be able to throw the ball. And so I had a great time, loved the camaraderie, and but at the same time, I got exposed to a lot of negative things, and participated in a lot of things that probably I normally wouldn't have, because of the popularity and because of who you are on campus. You're exposed to some things that, the partying, the drinking, the ladies, things like that,
Right.
that I probably would have not easily avoided, but I would have more readily avoided. But because of the sport, it exposed me to those things, and so I got in some trouble with those things when I was in college. But it gave me the opportunity to play, at the highest level, even though it was only for a year and a half. There were some things that kept me from playing at the highest level. I think the competition level that I experienced in college wasn't high enough. The coaching didn't prepare me well enough for what was going to be required from an NFL quarterback, as far as in the classroom, learning, those type of things. I didn't have that type of coaching, so making that jump from college to the NFL was a little bit more difficult for me.
And so for that, I mean, I guess let me transfer to the next question. Transition to the next question. Was your experiences in college and in the NFL, like, how did that springboard you into developing a relationship with God? What was that?
Well, I grew up going to church,
Okay.
and my mom pretty much instilled a relationship with God in me when I was very young. Uh, but I really didn't understand what that meant. I prayed. I prayed whenever I needed something.
Mm-hmm.
I prayed
Yeah.
before every game.
Yeah.
Things of that nature. I think it was a very self-focused relationship with God, and I
Right.
think it wasn't until I was done playing and God had humbled me in a lot of ways, athletically. Um, when your dream gets crushed when you're 24 years old,
Right.
that's humbling.
Right.
And I think that allowed God to come into my life at a much greater level, where I actually sat down and studied the Bible, really figured out what it said, and made those scriptures convictions as opposed to just something that I believed in.
Mm-hmm.
And so it really allowed me to learn for the first time really what God was all about, how much He loved me, and really His expectations of me and dreams for me.
I like that. That's really cool. So what is it that you do now? You're not playing football anymore, but what is it that you do now as your day-to-day?
So I'm lucky enough to be in the full-time ministry in San Diego, and I've been here for 14 years and loved every minute of it. I've worked with the teen ministry, the campus ministry, young professionals, and the marrieds ministry. I've done it all. I've just enjoyed it all. And right now I'm working with the empty nester ministry in part of the church called Pomerado.
Oh, nice. And what you learned from football and college and NFL, what was some stuff that you were able to take from that, and even it kind of like transitioned easily from you as a Christian? What was that like for you?
That's a great question. I think there's so many things that transfer over from sports to spirituality and to being a part of the church and helping people, because in sports, or especially in football, your teammates are so much a part of the scenario.
Yeah.
Being a great teammate, being there for your teammates, not being selfish,
Mm-hmm.
things of that nature. Now, I was very selfish as a player. Don't get me wrong. I had some wrong motives involved, but I think in retrospect, I look back and go, okay, there's a lot of lessons to be learned about being a great teammate, caring about people, and helping other people be successful. A quarterback is a lot like a point guard. You're trying to help other people be successful by getting them the ball in the right situation. And I think the same thing in the ministry. You're trying to help the Christians be successful and enjoy being a Christian,
Yeah.
and help them fulfill what God wants for their life. And that's really how I look at my role.
Gotcha. That makes sense, and that's actually a really good point, especially like football being like one of the ultimate team sports, honestly. And then what some people can not realize with the Christian walk is it kind of is a team sport. Also, you can't really do it on your own. It's
No.
really hard to. I know times when I've tried to do things on my own, it doesn't work at all.
Yeah.
So, talking back with sports again, now that you are a disciple of Jesus, you're a Christian, how has your lens of sports changed, or how do you approach sports now? Is it like, because I'm sure it's not like your everything now, but like how is that, as a sports fan, as someone who just watches sports, how has that changed for you?
Well, it's a great question. I still play sports, not at the same level, obviously. I played basketball the other day with some friends, full court, full speed. I was the oldest guy there by far, and I got run over a couple times. I'm very competitive. I still love playing sports, whether it's volleyball, on the beach, or basketball or tennis. I don't play the full contact sports anymore, but
Right.
I still love sports, and I'm very competitive. I think the biggest thing that changed for me was understanding competition. I think when I was young, when I was playing, competition meant to win.
Right.
At the end of the day, that's all that mattered. Did you win or not?
Yeah.
And that is such a shallow way to look at things. And I hadn't figured that out until I started coaching, which I did for 15 years at the high school level. And I began to realize that competition is about camaraderie. It is about valuing the other team, the opponent, the referees, the fans, the coaches. Everybody is a part of it, and you want it to be competitive. You're not out there trying to crush people.
Right.
And I've been on both sides of the scoreboard. We've been humiliated by teams, and then on the other side, we beat teams really bad. And both of those scenarios are not fun.
Yeah.
If you're coaching or playing.
Mm-hmm.
I would hope to aspire to just wanting a competitive, fun game where we're bringing out the best in each other.
Yeah, that's a good point. I know sometimes fans could get a little too crazy when it comes to, I know especially right now the World Cup is going on, and soccer fans, they go on a whole nother level. And I'm not going to pretend like I know like a lot of soccer, but even just a bunch of other fans as well can take it to a whole nother level.
Yeah, I think it's very nationalistic, right?
Yeah.
And you just want to crush people, and you don't like the other side, and that's just not what competition is about. And I think same thing in pro football. It's like if you're a Bronco fan, which I am, I grew up in Denver, we hate the Raiders.
Yeah.
That's just how it is. You want to crush the Raiders as bad as you can. But I think that's something that I really had to learn and not be that way anymore. Now, I won't even watch an NFL game unless it's competitive, even if it's the Broncos.
Right.
I don't want to see them win by 30.
Yeah.
And it's
just not fun.
No, it's a waste of time to me.
That's even kind of like the NBA now. It's kind of this past finals. I don't know if you were like watching that or following it. It was just not that entertaining at all.
The first game was great, and then after that it wasn't competitive.
Yeah, especially the last game. It was just like I was watching it with someone, and we weren't even paying attention. And all of a sudden, like they just started showing, like the confetti was falling. I'm like, oh, Golden State won. Okay, whatever. So with that competitive, like changing that competitive mindset, how has that affected your Christian walk now? Like taking that in as far as changing that.
You know what it's done, Carlos, is I see things differently. We played softball the other day after church, and whereas before I would want to win the game at all cost, now I'm pulling guys in. I'm encouraging other players. I'm encouraging the other team. I'm telling them nice hit. I'm doing things I would have never done when I was young, because it's not about me anymore. And I think for so long, sports was about me, and it was my identity.
Right.
And I don't want that to be the case. I don't want sports or anything else to be my identity other than being in Christ.
Yeah.
So that's the biggest thing that's changed for me.
Sports news right now, which is kind of that season where sports news is not really, at least for us, for football fans and basketball fans, it's kind of that little dead zone right now. Sorry for baseball fans. I am a baseball fan. I love baseball. Grew up with baseball, but if we're honest, the regular season of baseball is not that exciting. But there is some news. There's the NBA awards that just came up right now. The biggest one is James Harden got MVP for the NBA. Some people are thinking LeBron should have gotten MVP. There's other stuff. Ben Simmons won Rookie of the Year. Some people think Donovan Mitchell should have won that. But I want to know what you think, Loren. What do you think about all the awards that kind of went on right now?
It's interesting. I think LeBron, you could give him the MVP every year, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I never really understood that award. It's like, are you giving it to the best player, or are you giving it to the guy that's the most valuable player on his team?
Yeah.
And so I never totally understood that. I mean, obviously, I think you could give it to LeBron every year, but it's hard to argue with James Harden, the year he had and what he means to the Houston Rockets. So I think either way, you're safe with that, whoever wins that.
Yeah, that's true. And even it's almost like, because there was 2 other years where James Harden could have won MVP. I think it was the year Russell Westbrook won it, and then the year Steph Curry just went to town on everyone that 1 year. So it's kind of like, all right, here's the MVP that you've always deserved. And you're right. I think I'm not the biggest LeBron James fan, but I can acknowledge how great he is, and I think he can, especially this past year, definitely could have won it. So yeah, it's pretty interesting right now. I'm honestly kind of just waiting for football season to start.
Yeah, me too.
Going to be interesting with some of these new teams develop. As far as football goes, what are you looking forward to for the NFL season? Like, what are some surprise teams that you're looking forward to for maybe come up, or even like what are some things that you're looking forward to with football season?
Well, obviously I'm from Denver, so I'm looking forward to the Broncos turning things around from last year.
They have Case Keenum now.
Yeah, they have Case Keenum, which I think is a great move. They needed somebody to win right now. They still have that Super Bowl defense intact, and there's no reason why they can't get back there, but they just haven't had a quarterback. So I think getting him is going to be solid, and they also got a really good pass rusher in the draft. So
yeah,
I'm looking forward to that. You know, honestly, I love seeing all of the guys that switch teams, and it makes it fun for the beginning of the year. That was first 3 or 4 weeks are really exciting to see who's stepping up and which moves were the right moves and all that kind of stuff. So I love the beginning of football season.
Oh yeah, I think especially for me seeing, I almost called them St. Louis, but the LA Rams, all the moves they made, like picking up Aqib Talib, picking up, gosh, I'm forgetting his name, the other corner they picked up, but he's a big name too. The defense they have is potential to be ridiculous, but they have a bunch of like big alpha personalities there too, so it'll be interesting to see. Oh, I think they picked up Domkins too also.
Yeah, they're young, and they have a young head coach, which is really interesting to watch a guy that's that young manage those kind of egos.
Yeah, but I know their defensive coordinator, they have Wade Phillips, who's like the oldest guy, so it's funny how they have like the head coach is like the youngest head coach, and then the defensive coordinator is like the old dude. So
it's good balance to have. You got that experience, and he was a coach back when I was playing. Wade Phillips.
Really?
Yeah, he's been around a long time. He used to be the head coach of the Denver Broncos.
Oh wow. Well, there you go. So he definitely has wisdom and experience then. I'm curious to also see, like the Cleveland Browns. Like, I mean, you can only go up from here, and the talent that they added, talent-wise, on paper, like at least offense, they added some receivers. They have an okay quarterback. Why am I blanking on his name? Who just played for Buffalo? Tyrod Taylor. They have Baker Mayfield, which I don't know, to be honest, about Baker Mayfield. I don't know. What do you think about him?
You know, I love his energy. I love the passion that he plays the game with. I question a lot of the things that other people question, and that is his maturity, his improvisation, which in the NFL there's not near as much of that as he got away with when he was in college. He's a smart guy. He's a hard worker. I think he will end up being the starter, but I think that organization has much deeper issues as far as their organization, the way it's managed. I think they've had a lot of high picks for many years now, and they haven't been able to do anything with it, so it makes me question the deeper levels in that organization.
Yeah, why do you think that's the case with some organizations where, like, no matter what, like, they always somehow find a way to not get over that hump?
I mean, I think it's just total leadership. I think it starts with the GM and player personnel, and then obviously the head coach, and they haven't had any stability, and those people have not been able to parlay all of their draft picks into a team concept on game day, and it just hasn't worked out for them. So I look at it as a lack of leadership.
Yeah, something's got to change there for sure. I don't know. I hope for them, mainly because, like, as a player, it's tough to play and have fun when you're just losing all the time. So I mostly feel for the players. just being in that environment. Because I mean, you're in the NFL for a reason. I mean, you're obviously good. Just I don't know, for some reason it's just not working. Um, but we're gonna transition to the inspirational athlete of the episode, and we're transitioning back into the NBA specifically. It's kind of an old story, but not too old, because it's about a specific player called Jeff Green. If you might have heard of him or not, he played for he played for the Cleveland Cavaliers this past finals. And the reason why I bring him up is because um, he had one of the great games, a great game during the Eastern Conference Finals, and he was playing just lights out, and a bench player. And the reason why I bring up his story is, in around 2012, he had open heart surgery and was pretty much close to dying if it wasn't for his doctors catching this something wrong with his artery. And it took him a while to get back into playing, but he mentioned in the interview, the post game press conference, that he just was grateful for the fact that he went from having open heart surgery to now playing in an Eastern Conference, and even played in the NBA Finals, which was his first one. So that in itself is pretty crazy, to just have open heart surgery and then now get back into the swing of things. I'm sure you're not the same that you were before that, but Loren, I want to get your input, your thoughts about Jeff Green's story.
I'm not real familiar with Jeff Green's story. I know about probably as much as you just recapped right there.
Yeah.
But I think anytime there's an injury and you make it back, you're a lot more grateful. And I had my AC joint in my shoulder blown out my junior year, and I worked extremely hard to make it back for my senior year. And I tell you what, it changes your whole approach to the game, and you're a lot more respectful.
Yeah.
And I think it allowed me to look up and start looking at God, as opposed to myself, because you're limited as a human being. Your body is limited. And so I think, anytime there's an injury like that, it's an opportunity to really grow.
Yeah, I know for me, with my thing, I had my hip dislocated in high school, and that ended my football career, and I couldn't play anymore. So that was, as painful as that was for me, both physically, emotionally, and all that type of stuff. It was that thing that springboarded me into, like you were saying, just looking up and just put me in a humble place. Was depressed as well, but honestly, as weird as it sounds, I wouldn't take that back, because it was that event, that injury, that led me to someone reaching out to me in the church, and getting baptized and devoting my life to God. And yeah, it's funny how things like that can kind of springboard you into greater things, even though at that time, even I would even say right now, during my life right now, a lot of change and transition. I'm not really sure what's going on, but trying to hold on to that. Of the episode, and that topic is focus. And Loren, for you, when you think of the word focus, what are some things that come to your mind when you think of that?
That's a good one. I think the biggest thing I think of when I think of focus is, what do I want to be good at? And I think there's a lot of noise out there, and there's a lot of distractions. And I think for me, getting rid of the distractions and really being able to concentrate on whatever it is that I'm trying to focus on is probably the most important thing.
Right. And for you, when it came to sports, why, or even just sports in general, why do you think it's important for an athlete to have, to be focused, or to like have nailed down the idea of being focused in the sport that they're in, or even just training in general?
Well, I just think that there are it's so competitive nowadays that you have to focus in, especially on whatever the sport is that you're playing or the position that you're playing, and get some help, whether it be from a coach, whether it's training, whatever it might be, to really hone your skills for that specific position. Otherwise, you end up being a generalist, and you're kind of good at everything, but you're not great at anything. So it kind of depends on what you want to do.
Right.
But if you want to compete at a high level, I think absolutely you got to learn to focus on your specific position.
Yeah, and I like that you were saying that, because earlier off the mic we were having that conversation as far as like kind of being general or being okay in like a bunch of things, but like how much important it is for us to be at least excellent in one thing. What were some examples for you where focus played a big part for you when it came to like sports? Can you share an example of that?
Well, I think I shared a little bit. I got hurt my junior year, and I missed the last 3 games of the season because of my shoulder. I had a separated shoulder, got knocked out in the middle of a game. And in order for me to make it back, I had to really focus on rehabilitation. And I was up at 6 a.m. every morning as a college student, 5 days a week at the training room in the off season for 6 months, making sure that I got the help that I needed to make it back so I could play my senior year. And without that focus, there's 3 guys behind you on the depth chart that want your job, and they're going to take your job unless you really learn how to focus. So for me, that was one of the areas where I really had to focus.
Yeah. Let me ask this question. What would you say to someone, because that totally makes sense, as far as like rehabilitating, get back on the field, that's like a big thing for every athlete. What would you say to an athlete, or even whoever is like going through something in life, that is absolutely focused on something, and for some reason it doesn't turn out to like be what they expected, or they don't reach the goal that they wanted? Like for me, like I shared about my injury, and I was the same way, where I was in rehab, making sure I wanted to get back on the field, but there was a bunch of complications with like doctors, which I have my own opinion about on that, but pretty much it took a long time for like the doctors to get me an MRI appointment, CAT scan, all these things, because my hip was still hurting. And I was given hope that I can still play. I just need to rehabilitate. But then when I came back with the results, they were saying I couldn't play anymore, which was devastating for me. So that's like a sports example. What would you say to people who are focused on something, and then for some reason it doesn't work out in that sense?
Right. Well, I think we kind of talked about this, that when you focus on something and it becomes the most important thing in your life, you're setting yourself up for failure. And it's going to be a wake-up call for you. And I think that happened to me in pro football. Once I got cut by the Broncos, I knew my career was over, and it was devastating.
Right.
Because that was the most important thing in my life. And I think when people let anything become so sacred to them that they can't live without it, then they're in big trouble. And you either let it crush you, or you gather yourself and look up, hopefully, to God for the real answers about life. Or you move on to something else, and then that becomes sacred. But then, if you're not careful, my kids were sacred for a little while, and they were the most important thing in my life. And the problem is, all that kind of stuff is going to let you down sooner or later, and when it does, you're really going to struggle. And I think that's what my advice to people would be: don't let those things become so sacred in your life that they're the most important thing, because eventually they will let you down.
Yeah. No, that's a good point, and I just asked that because I think one, for people to listen and try to understand it, and two, honestly, just for me, like just like I mentioned, I'm figuring stuff out for my own life, um, and focus. For me, I could tend to like lose focus in a lot of different ways or directions, whether it's discouragement that may happen, whether it's change that can happen. Those type of things can tend to lead me, like make me lose my focus. Um, but then also I could tend to go the other extreme where I'm just so tunnel visioned on something to where I'm just like, this is what I'm focused on. Like this is, anyone's in my way, watch out. Like I'm gonna do that. Um, how would you say? How can you find that balance of like um, not being so like wrapped up into something, um, but then also not like be like losing focus or even just like nonchalant about things, like just whatever.
That's a great question. I think you got to be focused in order to be good at anything. And so I think it's very important that you're focused. And there's times where you have to survive. And
Mm-hmm.
when you have to survive, you got to be focused, whether it's finding a job, whether it's getting through school,
Yeah.
whether it's getting help in your marriage that's about ready to dissolve.
Mm-hmm.
There's times where you absolutely have to focus in order to survive. But that's not really the normal state of affairs, in my opinion,
Mm.
for most of our lives. We choose to focus on certain things. And I think you have to do a few things well, has always been kind of my motto.
Mm-hmm.
You're not going to be good at everything. You're going to spread yourself too thin, and you're not going to be good at anything, real good at anything. So my approach has always been, I want to be good at a few things, and I'm going to really focus on those things, and then let God take care of the rest.
Mm. That's encouraging to hear, honestly. And again, like these are some conversations we just had off mic. Um, Now, as far as like transitioning and taking that idea of focus from an athletic perspective, um, how do you apply that to a Christian walk or a walk with God? Like how do you how do you do that? Like talking, how does Loren do that for his own personal walk as far as taking that idea of focus?
Yeah, I think just trying to be best friends with God is a focus that I make my focus every single day. I try to. I want to befriend God and I want to please God. I don't always do that, but I know He's always there for me and I know He always loves me regardless. But I want to reciprocate
Mm-hmm.
and I want to involve Him in every aspect of my life. And so the cool thing about God is He's omnipotent, He's omniscient.
Mm-hmm.
So He's always everywhere in everything that we do. So in a
Yeah.
way, we don't really have to focus necessarily all the time because God's always there.
Mm.
But I do think it is something that as a Christian you have to develop and you have to really go after, and that is spending time with God every single day and being connected to Him emotionally
Mm-hmm.
and really focusing on, hey, what does God have for me today? What does He put in my path today where I can please Him in the process?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that makes sense. As far as like even because with the rat race of life going on, and it's so easy for people to lose focus, even on just like the important stuff, whether it's like their family and work. Um, you put God in the picture. Um, for some people, that can be hard. What would you say for people who um, they want and desire a relationship with God, but they feel like they need to be either all in or they're um, put off by the commitment of what that may look like? What would you say to people, whether encouraging them or like making ease, or maybe just being real with them? What would you say to people who may feel things like that?
I think I used to look at God like looking at a full pizza.
Hmm.
He was a slice in the pizza of my life. And when I started studying the Bible, I realized that God is the entire pizza. He's every part of my life, whether it's my marriage, my kids, my recreation, my education, whatever it might be. I need to have God and Jesus as the center of all of those different pieces of my life. And once I did that, it took the pressure off of that you have to be so focused on God all the time, because he's just a part of your life in everything that you do. And so it kind of freed me up to enjoy those different areas of life and invite God to be a part of each of those areas of my life.
Gotcha. And so how would you do that practically? Like if someone were to ask, like, okay, how can I put this into practice? Practically, what would that look like? Because some people can like to skew that and be like, oh, God's around me, so I don't need to really focus too much. But what would that look like for someone who says like, okay, I want a relationship with God. What do I have to do for that?
Right. And I try to not to look at it as what do I have to do, as I try to look at it more, who do I need to be? And in each of those scenarios, whether it's your marriage, whether it's your girlfriend or your boyfriend, that relationship, whether it's your role on some athletic team that you're a part of, it's the way I think God wants us to look at it is, how do I please God in this scenario? And if you bring God in to that scenario, he tells us how specifically we can put him first in those different areas, and in doing so really bring glory to him. And then what we do is we're able to befriend other people and bring down those walls and help other people understand really who God is, and therefore you're being used by God in a great way, which makes God feel good, but it also makes us feel good as he's using our lives.
Gotcha. I never thought of it that way. I know for me, I tend to go the route of like, what do I need to do? It's kind of like a soldier type of thing. I think especially even with like, when it came to football especially, it was just like, all right, what do I need to do? Just tell me what I need to do and I'll do it. Especially playing defensive line, that was my thing. It's just like, all right, give me an assignment, I'll do it. Pretty simple. I'll stick to that assignment. But when you said like, instead of what do I need to do, what do I need to become, I think that's honestly something I'm trying to figure out right now, because I've been so used to just, all right, just tell me what to do. And unfortunately, I could sometimes bring that into my own relationship with God sometimes. It's like, okay, what do I need to do to connect to him? What do I need to do to either make him happy or to do his work, to do his will? What do I need to do for that? Recently, I think I've been trying to understand that. And off camera, we talked about like identity, and as far as like my identity, it can either be in whatever I'm focused in, whether it's doing ministry, whether it was playing football. And I think for me, and I think for everyone, and what God wants is for us to have our identity in him, in Christ. And so, which sounds easier said than done, but I appreciate you even just saying that, even just reminding me, honestly, and the whole piece of pie thing. I like that analogy too. But that's pretty much it. But Loren, thank you so much for doing this. It's exciting. Sorry in advance for everyone listening if you hear outside voices. We're recording this at a park. Forgot to mention that. But it's a nice day out, honestly. But if there's any technical difficulties, we'll try to get that done. But this has been episode 5 of the Blood, Sweat, and Tears podcast. Thank you all for listening. Thank you again, Loren, for for being here.
Thank you, Carlos.
And stay tuned as we'll come up with more episodes. Thank you guys so much.